All right, so here we go. We've got a problem that says, what is the current in a 12 volt circuit with a 12 ohm resistor? All right, so when we get into these circuit problems, you're going to need to know these two equations. So these two equations are the main equations you need to memorize. If you don't have these memorized and you don't understand what each of the variables are, it's going to make it difficult to solve any of these problems. All right, so the first one is ear. It would just say it like ear and pi. So those are the two, ear and pi. So E equals IR, P equals IE. So the E is for voltage. E is voltage. It's voltage has a few different names. You can call it voltage. You can call it electromotive force. You can call it potential difference. So that's where the E comes from, is electromotive force. Current is I, and they used to call current, or it has another name of intensity. It's not a common anymore, but that's where that variable comes from. And then R is resistance. So we've got, that's ear. So I need to know when I see an E, that's voltage, and the unit is volts. When I have I, it's current, and the unit is amps. And I have resistance. The unit is going to be ohm, or you can see the omega symbol. All right, perfect. So then we have P is power, and that's the unit of watt. So when you hear the unit of watt, you should think electrical power. I, same thing as current in amps, and E is voltage. Remember, the E comes from electromotive force. Voltage can also be known as potential difference. It's the difference in potential between 2 points. That's what voltage is. All right, perfect. So some people like to use the triangle to solve instead of with algebra, and that's perfectly fine. I'm going to be using algebra through these videos, but with this triangle, you do have to kind of memorize the triangle or know how to write it out. Put the E on the top, IR on the bottom. Same for here. Put the P on the top, IE on the bottom. What you're going to want to do with this is, once you say you want to solve for I and you have the voltage and the resistance, then you're going to put your finger over the I, and you're going to divide E divided by R. And so the ones going from top, if I'm these two, I multiply. If it's here and here, I divide. So if I was looking, let's look at this pi. If I was looking for P for the power, like right here, I'd put my finger over the power, and then I would multiply the current times the voltage. Again, whichever method works for you, they all work, but just whatever you like to do. I'll probably show both in the beginning. All right, so we're back to our problem. So whenever I'm solving any sort of problem, there's a method that's the best way to go about it. You're going to want to first write down everything that you know from the problem. So right here, I've got 12 volts, and I have 12 ohms. So I'm going to write it out with the variables. E is equal to 12 volts, because E is voltage. R is 12 ohms. All right, perfect. So it doesn't tell you what equation you have to use. You have to figure it out, right? So we need to know the two equations. So you have to have these memorized, and you need to know what every variable stands for. So in this case, what I have is I have voltage and I have resistance. I can only solve these equations if I have two known values and one unknown value. So in this case, let's try to see if we would use pi first. So I do have I have voltage, but I don't have current or power, right? Let me take a step back. I forgot also. You definitely want to write down your unknown value. So what am I solving for? I'm solving for current. I want to get the current, right? So this is what I want. This is what I want, but I can't use pi because I don't have the power, so I can't use that equation. Can I use ear? So what do I want? I want I. Do I have the resistance? Check. Do I have the voltage? Check. So this is the equation I'm going to use, right? So there's the two methods. E equals I times R. So in this case, we have E and R. If I was going to use this method, I'd cover up the I, and I'd divide E by R. So I'd do 12 divided by 12 divided by 12. And that would give me I, the current, is equal to 1 amp. And again, if I was just going to use algebra, I would just plug it in. So I'd go 12 equals I, was my unknown, times 12. To solve for I need to divide both sides by 12. 12 divided by 12. I is equal to 1 amp. All right, perfect. So there's one example. Here's another one. So we have this voltage of a 24 watt circuit with, what is the voltage of a 24 watt circuit with 2 amps of current? So in this one, again, to go through this problem solving method, I'm going to write down everything I know. So I do know that the power is equal to 24 watts, and the current is equal to 2 amps. Okay, so what is it that I want? I want the voltage. So I'm going to write E. This is what I want. So I'm going to have to go over here. I mean, I can already see this spells pi right there, so I know which equation I'm going to use. So I have a choice between ear and pi. So if I was going to use ear, I'm looking for my voltage. I do have my current, but I don't have my resistance. So I can't solve that equation. So if I'm looking for voltage, I do have my current and I do have my power. So this is the one that I'm going to use, right? So if I was going to use the triangle method, it would be pi. So what is it that I want to solve for? The voltage. So I'm going to divide power by current. So that would be 24 divided by 2. And that would be 12 volts. If I was going to use algebra, I would just use my equation, plug in pi, P is equal to 24, I is equal to 2, and I want to solve for the E. I don't know that. That's what a variable is, right? Something that we just don't know what it is. Or it can stand for many different values. Okay, divide by 2, divide by 2, 2 divided by 2, 24 divided by 2, E is equal to 12 volts. Perfect, so it's not too bad. All right, so here's one that's a little more difficult. So this one, it says, what is the operating resistance of a 45 watt light bulb designed for a 24 volt system? So again, with my problem solving method, what I'm going to do is write down everything I know. So I say it has watt, right? So I need to recognize what watt is. Watt is electrical power. So I'd have 45 watts in a 24 volt system. So we know E is 24 volts. What do we want? We want resistance. So that's our unknown value. So if I come over to my equation, I've got pi and ear. So what I want is this resistance. The only equation that has resistance is ear. So here's what I want. I do have the voltage, but I don't have the current. So I can't use this equation to solve this problem. So this is a two-step problem, right? So what I need to do is use pi to solve for my current first. So I'd have right here, if I'm going to use my triangle method, I've got pi. So I do have the power and I have the voltage, so I can solve for my current. So again, I'd cover up the current. I do power, which is 45 watts, divided by 24 volts. And that would be 24. Comes out to not a nice number, but 1.875 amps. So with that information, then I can come over and use, because now I have I is equal to 1.875 amps. Now I can use that information and use ear. So again, A equals I, R. What I want to solve for is R. So I'm going to cover R up and divide 24 divided by 1.875. 24 divided by 1.875. And that's going to give me a resistance of 2.8 ohms.